Greetings and salutations to my kings and queens. This is episode 3 of Black in Fact. I'm your host, Wise, and today on the podcast, we'll be listening to a discussion I had with two colleagues of mine earlier last month. At the time of this recording, I'm sure a string of new things have hit the headlines, allowing us to forget about all the major issues that still remain relevant in our community. I open this discussion to all of our listeners, so feel free to comment below on any of the discussion that rings true to you and further the dialogue. Please be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification button so you know when the next episode is up. Thanks, enjoy, and welcome to the conversation.
So like I said, shithole countries. To give some context, but behind closed doors, Donald Trump made a remark along the lines of, why do we want all these people from shithole countries to come here? When discussing the visa lottery that Lindsey Graham and Dick Durbin had mentioned to him during a meeting a couple weeks ago. He continued his rant after Senator Dick Durbin mentioned Haiti. Trump replied, "Why do we have to have people from Haiti or Africa? Take them off," he said in response to the lottery issue. "We should get more people from countries like Norway." Let's discuss our own personal feelings toward our own countries and how growing up as a black male, we already have some imposed bias towards ourselves and what we look like. But on top of that, we also now have this bias towards the nations our families came from. So if you guys want to touch on that a little bit, first, if you had any experiences growing up where you had issues with who you were, where your family's from, or other people, if any.
I can start with that one. So I grew up in Brooklyn, in Canarsie. So it was a very Caribbean area.
Yeah.
Like it was either you were Jamaican or Haitian. We had some Chinese sprinkled in. But it was basically a very Caribbean community. So I never really saw being, first of all, I'm first generation Jamaican. I was born here.
Start off with that.
I was born here. My parents immigrated here. And I'm, like I said, first generation. So for me, being in that community, being around people who are all Caribbean, my family was all obviously Caribbean, I didn't really feel like it was a bad thing. You know what I mean? It didn't really come across to me as, you're from a third world country or anything. I didn't get that feeling at all. It almost felt like, it was actually a cool thing.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because you go to school and you'd have like on Flag Day, everybody would come with their flags, and it was a real sense of community. I never saw it as a negative ever. I never saw it as this was like a bad place or a negative
shithole country.
A shithole country. Never ever saw that. I did go to Jamaica once. I was really young. I must have been like 9 or 8. My mom sent me down there, and it's definitely a different type of living. You know what I mean? Like,
you say culture shock?
Definitely culture shock.
Yeah.
They're they don't have as much wealth. They don't have as much access to technologies. That's just the fact of how it is. But I never saw it as that. Like the people were less than. I never ever even thought about that at all.
How long have you been here?
I've been here my entire life. I was born here.
Okay.
So I went to Jamaica once.
Oh, I'm sorry. You say you?
Yeah.
I
was born here.
Okay.
That's interesting. Would you say that your pride in the culture was based on the fact that you grew up in Brooklyn, surrounded by other people,
I
just like you? Because my experience is different. Obviously, like growing up in Rockland, it was just like a huge rainbow of different people, mainly white, granted, but like my experience growing up was that in elementary school, I was the same as all these other kids. After elementary school, as soon as I got into middle school, like I was aware I was Haitian because apparently like that was a big deal. So yeah, myself, I'm a first generation Haitian American, and I actually lost an aunt in the 2011 earthquake. So I feel some connection towards the country. Sure. And, but at the same point in time, I've never been to the country, in large part due to my mom's desire for me to never be there. Like, I feel as though she kind of, says like, listen, we have an opportunity in this country. I already went through all the bullshit there. Like, I don't want you to have to deal with anything. over there. So she told me stories of violence and poverty that plagued the country. She would describe Haitian men as untrustworthy. And given that my father was, a cheater and he left her, who was I to disagree? Slowly but surely, I inadvertently grew like a distaste for the Haitian and the Haitian American identity that I had. School wasn't easy. Like I said, when I went to middle school, the older kids made it very apparent that there was something wrong with being Haitian. I saw kids who just got from Haiti being ridiculed and called names like HBO, which at the time was an acronym for Haitian booty odor. And, it was weird. Like, here I am growing up in a very diverse culture. It was a good quip. It's funny. I get it. But it's like I grew up in a diverse culture, and here I am with kids coming from this culture that identifies with myself. And I didn't want to identify with them because it was like society was telling me there was something wrong with that. Right. Like, these people are from a shithole country. So I had people, there would be like these kids clicking and clacking, to interpret or to impersonate Creole as if we were like some savages. And, being a first generation, my English was immaculate. So I was like, do I hide who I am? Do I pretend? So I was in a really tough position. It was pretty confusing because, I never thought of my identity as anything else other than being me. But it was very clear that being Haitian, the stigma behind being Haitian made me identify with it. And there was a stigma inside myself. And I never felt like that. But I had to wonder at some point in time, was like, is my country actually a shit? I felt like there was a point in time where I thought my country was a shithole country, like my mom didn't want me to go there. Mm-hmm. And it was a problem with other people in school. So like my whole world was just based on this, don't want to do it. I didn't learn Creole until I was 18. I didn't actually start speaking until I was actually 18. But, in hindsight, I grew closer to my nationality, my culture, my language, and my name. And it made me who I am. And for that, I'm grateful for being Haitian. And, there's nothing I could change about it, my past. But it's interesting how society can kind of play into your mind and make you feel less than. Right. And to a point where it's okay for a president to tell you, hey, remember, you're shit. Right. So I don't know.
So I think that's really the Black experience in general. Sort of just there's something to always remind you of that time or that past. I'm Jamaican born, and I came here when I was about 5, a little younger than 5, and I didn't go back to Jamaica until I had to be about 8 or 9, like you, and we visited, and it was a completely different experience. But it was when I first arrived here, my mom would tell me I had a really thick accent. She says my voice now is the way it was when I was 4. I don't understand that. But, I had a thick accent, and, because of that, I was put back a year. Wow. In school. And, from that point on, it was like, I kind of knew I was different from other kids or whatever. I grew up, we traveled, my folks were immigrant farmers. Actually, they picked fruit. They put oranges in Florida, and when some winter time came around or the cold weather came around, they went to Rome, New York to pick apples. So we do that.
God damn.
We did that.
Like, that's north, bro.
Yeah, it's up there. So we only did that trip maybe one time, but my mom came here before I did, and sort of laid groundwork, and my grandparents did that trip like for their entire lives. We landed in Connecticut. Again, it was like multicultural people, but there were very few outside of my family. There weren't identifiable Jamaicans, right? So it wasn't. So the only, I guess the anchor or whatever you want to call it was in my family. And going to school was pretty difficult because for the people who were Haitian or from another country, they call them African booty scratchers. It was African booty scratcher was the, you didn't want to be called that or teased or, so it was I think for me,
from America is great.
Right. So, I mean, growing up, I never had any ill feelings towards Jamaica. If anything, I was kind of resentful that I was here because my dad would always say, "Oh, you don't listen to Jamaican music. You're not Jamaican." Blah blah. Playfully, not really. He
but it
didn't
got
mean no harm to it. But you know how things can be or whatever, and your uncles are teasing you and stuff like that. So, if anything, I wanted to belong more. But I'm in America. What are you gonna do? Hip hop is the culture. So that's what I listen to.
No, I feel you.
But yeah.
That's really interesting points. How do you think Bob Marley has affected the position of Jamaica in the world view?
Huge.
Because I mean, granted, even though Haitians were like the first slaves to free themselves, like we don't have that same clout like worldwide as far as like
the reasons why.
Yeah,
that is the reason.
That's probably the reason why, because you were doing something that was against
the norm.
The norm, and it was against the whole colonialism that this whole country was founded on. So they're not going to want that to be celebrated. But somebody who's an entertainer, smokes a lot of weed,
sure, we'll let them do that. So I just it's an interesting little perspective on things. It's like how are we still how is Haiti still considered a shithole country? Why is it like
I want to tell?
There's only 4. Okay, let's get into it. But it seems like 4% of people actually realize that Haiti were the first slaves to like free themselves from colonialism, and it's just such a underestimated like country in general. But let's get to your point.
I feel like you got to think about the context. One, you got to think about who's saying it. You're talking about Donald Trump, who his whole life has been a billionaire, who's never had to really, I'm not going to say struggle, because I'm sure he's had his own struggles in his own kind of way.
Right.
But he's not had to, he's not had to want for anything in any kind of way. He doesn't have an understanding of that type of a lifestyle. All he sees is probably what's on TV and what his circle of friends think about it. And his circle of friends don't know either. So his ideas of what a shithole country is are probably reinforced by all the things that are going on around him. So I feel like it's when he says stuff like that, I really don't put much credit to it. I think of it as a white man talking to his white friends, the same way we would talk about potentially something that we see in our own cultural way, where we'll talk about it and we'll say this and that. I think him saying that is just him being a rich white male in America, coming from that perspective and saying that. I don't. Doesn't mean that it's true. It doesn't mean that it really. I put no weight on that, besides the fact that he is saying something out of turn, which I'm used to at this point.
Right.
And it still doesn't make it right.
Something we'll get to.
It doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it the right thing to do, but it is what is going on. And I think the important thing to remember in a situation like that is just remembering that what he's saying is not true. You know what I mean? So he can say all he wants, but just because he's a president, he can say these things and people talk about it on the news, it's in the paper, but that doesn't mean it's true. It's just one guy saying something off of his ill-advised opinion of the world. That's
so I'd like to just bounce that idea. I mean, what he's saying is not true. We in this room can vouch for that. But hold on. At the same time, he's the president of the United States.
So?
Right. Obviously, we can say that. But for the people that are his base, for the people that only watch Fox and Friends, like I hear what you're saying. You're preaching to the choir for all I like I get it. I get what you're saying. What you're saying makes sense. But at the same time, like you saying this is only as effective as it would be if someone who didn't believe what you believed heard it.
That's true. I recognize that.
So that's the big issue. Like what he's saying is not true, but he's the president of the United States, and the people that are willing to believe him are going to take him at face value.
Right.
And that's what's the issue there.
I just want to add this to it though too, because no one would have known about this comment if I think it was Durbin that you know sort of brought it to the media or whatever, or just brought it to light. So it's the moment itself is also highly political. You know, I think that's also a piece of it. And I agree that, you know, he said it, but I think he said it in a way or in a environment that he felt comfortable saying it in, and didn't really think that that in itself is messed up.
That's fucked up,
right? And so I kind of wonder if you know, Bill Clinton used language like that, or the Bushes or whatever, you know, and it never saw the light of day.
Yeah.
So there's also that politic to it, in that maybe Durbin knew. Everyone knows that it's inflammatory. It'll make him look bad. So there's two sides to that as well, because, you know, it didn't have to see the light of day. Half the room said I don't recall, but
which is fucking madness.
But that's the world that we.
But at the same time, it's still what our president thinks.
Right.
Like, even if it didn't have to see the light of day, it didn't have to be a big story, it didn't have to get any clout for political clout for Dick Durbin, it still is what our president thinks.
Right.
And that, I mean, like, I get what you guys are saying, but we got to dig deep, bro. Like, we really got to, like, look at the underlying issue. It's still what our president thinks. And when he's going out about in middle America, this is what he's talking to. This is who he's talking to. This is what he's preaching.
True. So
that becomes an issue, which, you know, what we have to deal with all the time. You know, it doesn't faze us. You know, it seems like it doesn't faze any of us here. We're not really surprised by the fact. It's kind of like that Dave Chappelle special when he was on SNL. He's just like, really? You really didn't know he was going to win? Like, come on, man. Like, this is a surprise. I'm not surprised by any of it. I'm surprised by the effect it has on the rest of the nation. So with that, I'm just going to move along and just try to get your guys' idea on, like, have you had any past history with any beef with any other black culture that wasn't your own? Like, because like I said, I didn't realize I was Haitian until, like, I met other black kids that made it a deal for me to be Haitian. And so I wanted to know if there was an issue, like, in history with you guys growing up where you noticed, it doesn't have to be a personal thing, noticed that there was, like, a beef between other cultures within our community, or...
Well, it wasn't, I came here when I was 4, like I said, and it wasn't cool to be a Jamaican back then. It was not, like, it's part of the reason I don't have an accent. You know, it's more of a...
I feel you.
It's more of a suppressing yourself, not telling people who... It wasn't, there was no... Outside of my family, there was no pride in being in a Jamaican. Like, no one celebrated it. The kids would make fun of you if you had an accent, or, you know, that kind of stuff. So it wasn't until, you know, maybe the mid-90s or so that, you know, I would see people, you know, come... I was... at that time, high school and all that kind of stuff, and people came straight from Jamaica to the, you know, enrolled in high school and whatnot, and they were accepted, and you know, it's sort of like it was a complete shift. And at that time,
you came
like,
too early. You're like, yo, hey, what about me?
You know, so yeah, I mean, there was always a, you know, when people found out that you were Jamaican, it's kind of like you were a pariah or something.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So it was very strange.
I'll be real. Like, you know, I honestly had kind of like the same experience where it wasn't, you know, I realized it wasn't cool to be Haitian. So, like, I kind of concealed that part of me. I'm just like, my name's Pierre Filzame. Filzame is a very French name. Like, we were owned by a French family. So I was able to play it off like, oh yeah, my great great-grandfather was a Tuskegee Airman. He went to France and stayed there. So it was just like, but like the level I went, like, doing some history searching, like, how can this make sense? Like, because I don't want to be Haitian. Like, just the idea that I needed to go that far to be ashamed of who I was is just like, it's like, now I'm completely fine with it, but it's just because we're at a level where society's okay with just people being who they are. And like, I don't know if that says a lot about me as somebody growing up in a society that I wanted to adapt to, or does that say more about the society that allowed a kid to feel ashamed about who he was? It's just an interesting situation, and I can empathize with your situation because, like, it wasn't cool when you were going to high school to be a Haitian. And what does that, or Jamaican, and what does that do to your psyche?
Literally everyone around me was either Jamaican or was Caribbean.
Right.
They were, like, this is middle school I'm talking about now. High school was completely different.
Because you went to
I went to high school with all white
kids, yeah.
That's a different story.
Right.
But middle school, like elementary school, I never felt like it was weird to be Jamaican. It was almost like a cool thing.
Yeah.
Because it was like our little, like, clique or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
We had like a Jamaican clique, like there were like Jamaican gangs and like I know it's real. Like it was never a weird thing to be Jamaican. So I can't say I experienced that, but high school was definitely way different.
Right. Can you touch on that just a little bit?
I mean, so I went to high school in Boston, or suburb south of Boston.
Say no more.
Yes. And this was like complete, it was obviously very different. It was different in the sense that it was all white people, but they weren't like normal white people.
They were Jewish.
There was some Jewish, but these are like very wealthy white people.
Yeah.
Who think they're like worldly and who, like, they're not like your average everyday white person. They're like the top white people, I guess you could say. You know what I mean?
What school was this?
This is Milton.
Okay.
So it was very different. We actually had some kids from Jamaica who would come, like transfer students.
Oh wow!
And they were Asian.
Of course.
Completely blew my mind.
Yeah, right.
Completely blew my mind because I'm coming from Brooklyn, Canarsie. I'm like with Jamaican gangs and whatnot. And then I see these. I hear like, oh, there's some new students coming from Jamaica. I see these two girls, completely Asian, but spoke like patois. And I'm just like, I never knew that. I never knew that side of it. You know what I mean? So I'm like, wait a minute. And that really opened my eyes to less about the diversity and more classism. Because now these they're Jamaican, but they're not like normal Jamaicans. They're in the higher class of Jamaicans. So like that kind of opened my eyes to there's really a lot of differences. There's cultural differences, there's class differences, and they don't always have to coincide. You know what I mean? So that, I think seeing that definitely opened my eyes to that. Like, there's a lot of ways that people try to separate people, whether it's the language you speak, where you're from, how much money you make. It's I feel like it's human nature to try and cut people up into different groups and think that every group is this way.
Trump, white privilege. The fact that he was even able to, the fact that he's still able to talk about grabbing pussies on live television, the fact that he's able to call black communities shithole countries, the fact that he's able to disparage people with special needs publicly, the fact that he's able to just straight up call Mexicans gangs and killers and all sorts of shit, and have no repercussion. If Obama said any of the shit in the campaign that Trump has said since day one, never would have happened. Yeah. Never would. Let's just be real. It doesn't matter what your political line is, where you fall on the political line.
Are you surprised by that?
I'm not. It's just shame on you, America. That's kind of how I feel. I'm not surprised, but at the same point in time, we're seeing what we're allowing to accept and how far it can go, and where is the level of normal. If we continue to let the extreme be an everyday occasion, this was normal. Now this is normal. This is extreme. But if Donald Trump is always here and we're just like, oh, well, that's just something he does. That's just something he's done. This becomes normal. Right. This is no longer normal. this is normal.
Right. That's true.
So, where's it going to end up? Because it seems like there's no end in sight where he can disparage countries that have been devastated. He's not, doing shit for Puerto Rico. He hasn't done shit for Haiti. He hasn't done shit for any country. He's just made a wider gap internationally for all of us. Like every day I'm thinking this name might be on a war on the cusp of tomorrow. But at the same point in time, what puts us in a position where it's okay for him to just call African countries and Haiti and some countries in South America okay?
I think the problem is you think that the president is some type of moral leader. He's not.
Oh no!
In our minds,
I don't think that.
So him acting in that way, why does that? I guess I'm just asking why does that?
Why does that surprise me?
Why does that surprise you?
I'm not saying it surprises me. I'm bringing up the case that we're allowing as a group, as a nation, we're allowing the normality of it to put us in a negative light internationally. Why are we allowing this to be so normal? Like I'm not saying I'm okay with it. I'm not saying I'm not surprised by it. I'm just saying, why is this becoming normal? Like, what's happening? I'm trying to get to the nitty gritty, the context.
For me, I don't think it's when you say why are we allowing it. It's who's the we, right? Because it's not us.
It's not us.
We don't. We're at an age now where all that stuff, all it does is sell newspapers, sell subscriptions, and things like that. So, and there's the fact that he's a white man saying it, and
a rich white man,
right? He's a rich white man saying it. So there's definitely some privilege in that. There's a lot less. I don't think people in Congress have the spine to stand up and speak against those things. There's a lot of money involved. If you don't walk this rope, you're not going to be in office next term. So there's a lot of there are a lot of captives in Congress. There's not people think that these people go there and they make the laws. They're sitting around the table with their wife saying, okay, I'm going to make this law and we're going to pass it. We're going to do something good. It's the Koch brothers are saying, no, you're going to have to do this. Oh, he said that. Listen, I put $250,000 in your pocket last year. I need this to happen no matter what he's doing out
Pay me what you owe me.
So there's a lot of and then there's the smoke screen of it. The office of the president has always seemed to be this moral thing.
It should be.
It should be. It absolutely should be.
Absolutely.
Even if the man in office is the worst person on the planet, at least when you step outside there, you project, because the difference between Trump and any other president is that he doesn't even really care about the country. You understand what I'm saying? He doesn't really even care about the country. Other presidents, at least, would not disparage the country to that level. He's just a loose cannon, and no one's going to stop him from doing it because he passed his tax bill, which all the rich people wanted him to do. So he's good. So he's good.
Yeah, man. All right. So we're gonna sum that up to white privilege.
Put a check in that box. Put a check in that box.
Check that box. All right. So when we get back, we'll start talking about cryptocurrency. What is Bitcoin? Discuss the blockchain. What's Bitcoin's actual value, and how does it actually help the Black community? All right. So our next topic is cryptocurrencies. We'll be discussing Bitcoin, the blockchain, Bitcoin's actual value. Does it have any actual value? and its relevance to the Black community and how it could help. I want to ask you, what exactly is Bitcoin and why are you even interested in it?
Well, the way I understand Bitcoin is, it's decentralized currency, basically, right? And when you think about what money is, it's just really, this pen. I can take this pen and say, if you have value in it, if you believe this is worth $100, and you want to trade it for something else, then this is money, right? And that it's the same. That is the concept behind it. The reason why I am a huge advocate of cryptocurrency is to get rid of the current monetary system, right? The fiat currency.
Completely agreed.
Only because of the way that the IMF does its business around the world, the Federal Reserve does its business around the world,
And then in our nation.
right, right. So I'm rooting for it because of that one thing. Like I hope that it doesn't. It's not like this thing that just peters out, and I don't think it will. As the base Bitcoin code starts to fork, you get like Ethereum and then Ripple and all these other things. I think if people believe in it enough, it would change the world in terms of getting rid of that middleman, right?
Right. So what's your understanding of Bitcoin?
So my understanding is very similar to that, and I agree with everything you just said. I agree that I hope that it would be something that would take us away from a system that you have all these middlemen, like the banks and all these things, and be on like a more peer-to-peer system of fiat currency. I just don't believe, it's my opinion, that I don't think that it will be able to actually evolve into that. I think that before it gets there, the U.S. government is going to do whatever they can in order to control it. Because you don't want, right now the U.S. dollar is the world currency. Everything is basically, if you want to really do business on a large scale, you need to have U.S. dollars. I think if there's ever a currency or some type of monetary...
It's not gold.
Gold, I mean, after we left the gold standard, like, no. Okay. Like it's more so like dollars. So I feel like the U.S. government is going to do whatever they can in order to either control it or suppress it. So I have a pessimistic / realistic view on it because I agree with what you said. I want it to be that, but we've already seen signs of the control that the U.S. government is trying to put over it. Yesterday, at the Senate, a Senate hearing of SEC chairman, CFTC chairman, they spoke about virtual currencies and their jurisdiction over regulating it and stuff like that. And basically, they were all about it. They were like, "This is a great thing. Like, we want to, we want to encourage it." They compared it to the internet. They were saying like, when the internet came about, there was a quote unquote do no harm approach to it, where they just kind of let it ride and they didn't want to restrict it. When it comes to cryptocurrency, they're saying that they want to do the same thing. I think that's just them getting ahead of it, being like, okay, this is great. But I read the article, the actual Senate document, and basically they were like, yeah, right now it's considered a commodity, which would put it under the jurisdiction of the CFTC.
Where did you get the article from? Like, what site?
The article was on the Times, and there was like links in the article, so I actually got the actual document.
Okay.
But basically, they've listed it. The CFTC has come out and said that it is a commodity, like wheat, corn, foreign interest rates, whatever. They're considered a commodity. They also say under the CEA, I forget what the Commodity Exchange Act, they have no real jurisdiction to oversee it. So it's in this weird place where they've described it as a commodity, but they really have no jurisdiction over it. The only specific jurisdiction they have is to prevent situations of fraud or like misconduct or something, or fraud or fraud. Let's just say fraud.
Yeah.
So in that article, they also say that currently there's no institution that can regulate this, but we're looking to creating one. Is basically what they say in the pages on pages. They're like, yeah, right now, like we don't really have the jurisdiction, but in the future, that's something we're looking to do. Which basically tells you that they are starting to gear up to say, okay, we can't stop this, but we're going to be putting things in place in order to control it and mold it onto how we want it. So that's where I think it's going.
Okay.
So I don't think it's going to be that completely take the middleman out of it, because we're talking about the U.S. banking industry. That's not going to happen. Okay. You know what I mean? And that's my pessimistic view of things. But we talk about how
The principle of the blockchain itself is that you and I can do business. Like in terms of, we'll probably get into it a little bit later, but the smart contract piece of Bitcoin or the blockchain says that, you know, as like a music artist, right? I can sell my music directly to you, and you buy my music because you like it, right? And the currency is Ether or Ripple or whatever. So even if there's regulations around it, it's still a peer to peer. So I don't know.
it's still peer-to-peer, but like,
It's going to be regulated.
it's going to be so. It's going to be like, it's still a peer-to-peer. I agree, like, but look, none of us know how this is going to
Right,
turn out,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
But it's just my opinion that you can regulate it in such a way where it's not strictly peer-to-peer. You can say for transactions over X amount, they're not allowed. You can say transactions with X party, and this party has to apply for this special designation, which allows them to. There are a lot of ways that you can restrict it, and I feel like
On a large,
on a large, even on the person to person scale, like they can make a rule saying, okay, if you're gonna buy something that's not related to, this is random, but entertainment. Let's say music to music. Let's say all entertainment related transactions. In order to do the transactions, you have to be designated as an entertainment transaction provider, which comes along with a 40-page application and then its own restrictions. So I feel like on its face, the idea of it is very good and it's amazing, but the U.S. government is not going to allow a free range currency between individuals to just happen. They're going to have some type of control over it to the point where they can regulate it.
Tax.
And what they're going to do is they're going to say, we're doing this for protection. We're doing this to protect the people. They're going to say we have to do this because people might take advantage of people.
it would be interesting to see. I know they would try. They would. I think that they'll try to do it, but I just based on how it's set up, I don't know exactly how they would do it.
Okay. Me neither.
It's very tough to, and I think that's where I'm coming from. It's really tough to see that happen. It would be a shame if it does happen, and I think the only way that does happen if it's like there's a cloud of fear and uncertainty around it, and people buy into this way of doing it. Like
It seems to happen all the time whenever China wants to decide to do something that's negative towards cryptocurrency. People get afraid and start they start throwing away. Like this past couple of weeks have been rough.
Yeah,
it's been rough.
Really
like I
bad.
think we went down like 3,000.
They're beating it up.
Like a day?
Like last
Yeah.
week. It's back up.
I mean, it's back up, but like so is the stock market. Like things. This is.
Are we talking about the stock?
I'm not. Well, let me not. I'm just saying like. It's like what I had discussed with you the other day about Warren Buffett. Like, if you're not in it to invest in something in 5 to 10 years, you shouldn't be investing in the first place. Like, things are going to happen. Things are going to fluctuate. People's minds are going to change. So, like to what your point was, we don't know what's going to happen at any point in time. We don't know where the world is going to turn if people want to go towards deregulated blockchain cryptocurrencies, or if they're going to allow regulations to take over everything. The Republican Party seems to be very anti-regulations, but when it comes to like losing the value of the American dollar compared to a deregulated currency, they seem to be all about regulation. So it's very conflicting and very confusing. So I hear what you're saying. The party that actually controls us right now seems to be very anti.
It matters what party.
It doesn't, because money is money at the end of the day. Money is money.
And safety and people's
Right.
sense of security and
Sure.
Right, of course. That plays a huge part into it. So, just to run back real quick, if you could explain what a smart contract is, and then if you can explain certain regulations, we'll let him go first. So, just a smart contract.
Yeah. Smart contracts came out of the Ethereum fork of Bitcoin.
It's more safer.
It's
more secure.
it's a more how would you say stable currency. But the smart contract system basically is it binds it sort of binds two people into an agreement, if you will. There's a lot of, or it's because the blockchain and the cryptography that runs on it is virtually unbreakable. It locks you in with another party. So it's not. You can think of it as a contract, like a music producer would sign an artist or whatever. But you can also think of it like I forgot what country it is, but they're using the blockchain to prevent child trafficking.
Right.
Or, so
It's flexible.
Right. It applies to
A lot of things.
pretty much a lot of things where there's a middleman and you're trying to remove that middleman. So, for instance, there's no with the child trafficking. A child can be ID'd at birth, no passport, no nothing like that. Can be ID'd at birth, and their thumbprint is basically on this blockchain. They cross a border, you scan the thumbprint, they know it's that person, regardless of.
So there's a broad use for the smart contract,
Right,
and it could be
yeah.
applied to many different things.
Right.
All right. So can you describe some regulations?
These regulations aren't in place yet because they're just now being written. But for example, you talk about an ICO, which is an initial coin offering. Right now, it's similar to an IPO, which the SEC would regulate. But because this has been determined as a commodity, the SEC doesn't have jurisdiction over ICOs, quote unquote ICOs, nor really does the CFTC. That's why they're looking to create a new entity to regulate these things. So can't speak
talk
to
on
a
regulations
specific
just yet.
regulation because they're not out there yet.
Okay.
But one thing that the article did, or the document did talk about, was the whole fraud thing. So basically in the article they cite, and this is well known, that there have been a lot of like Bitcoin thefts, like where hackers go on and basically steal Bitcoin from whatever. It doesn't have to be Bitcoin, it can be on any one of the other cryptocurrency platforms. And they said about 10% of all cryptocurrencies that have been issued has been hacked. And so basically they're going to use that and say that the public needs to be protected because there are hackers out there. And then that's how you start the regulation. That's how you start to control it, on the guise of we're protecting people.
Okay. So now we're going to be discussing why should we get involved in Bitcoin or cryptocurrency, or why we shouldn't. So let's get into the why we shouldn't first.
I guess that's me.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's a good long-term investment. Maybe you guys will be filthy rich down the line, and then you'll be laughing. But right now, I just don't think it's a good long-term investment because of the reasons I said before.
Right. But you don't know 100%.
Of course not. That's just my opinion. I just don't think it's the returns that it's getting now is it did go up the other day because the SEC and CFTC came out and said that they were all about it. So I know it went up yesterday pretty substantially, I guess, but I just don't think it's a good long-term solution because on its face, it's what we discussed. It has this idea of being this decentralized process where you can do peer-to-peer transactions, and I just don't think that that's going to last.
I think on the I guess there's two parts to it. When it comes to Bitcoin itself, I don't know if Bitcoin itself would be viable long term, right? I think only because of the history of Bitcoin. Like I don't know if you guys know about the first purchase of Bitcoin or what Bitcoin, the first exchange of Bitcoin for actual product was a guy who had he had 2 Bitcoin and he bought 2 pizzas, right? But if he held on to those 2 Bitcoins, he'd be a multi-millionaire. Yeah. And there are multi-millionaire Bitcoin, in crypto, multi-millionaires in cryptocurrency. And, that in itself tells me that there is something viable in the concept of cryptocurrency. Absolutely. I don't know if it's Bitcoin long term, but I think the more stable stuff that's coming out is. So investing in the currency, I'm not 100% sure about, but I'm enjoying the ride right about now. I kind of want to just get in and, spend money that I can spend and see how that goes. The other side of it is the motivation for me is I have a family, I have 2 kids or whatever.
You want it to work.
Yeah, I want it to work. And the way the economy is set up and, it's sort of like the next wave to ride on to get yourself out of a current situation.
Yeah, it's like the gold rush.
Yeah, so it's the gold rush. So yes.
So just to get a quick understanding, when, if you don't mind me asking, when did you get into it? Because I got it at 646.
Yeah, I don't see. That's the thing. I don't even own Bitcoin because it was too late. Once, I don't have that extra money to spend on it. So it's what else is going to do? What else is going to actually happen? So when it comes to getting into Bitcoin, it was when I was actually thinking about it, was maybe $800 or so around there.
Yeah, and I was still at the time.
Well, I just didn't. I thought about it being very risky. I'm not a hardcore trader or anything like that, or investor or things like that. I play it really safe, and I don't have that money to spend on it. So it was okay, let's let it sit. Let's let it do it. It's not gonna skyrocket like that. And it hits $19,000. And I'm like, what the heck?
So my experience was I had done a ton of research because I had a friend prior in Albany who was talking about Bitcoin for a while. And as soon as I came down here to live in the city, I was doing some research and looking into it, and it seemed as there was going to be an uptick at that point in time, and the possibility of Trump even winning had an effect on on the currency itself. So I got in at 646 two Octobers ago, and I felt like that was a risk worth taking. And by the time he became president on January 20th of 2017, the next day the uptick was coming. It just kept coming and it just kept coming. So the impression was, all right, October, you know what's happening. Buy the coin, regardless if Hillary wins in November, regardless if Trump wins. It doesn't matter. You tried. If Trump wins, then all of a sudden money's going to come in because he's all about companies. Companies are making money. Bitcoin's going to make money. That was my interpretation. I had no idea he was actually going to win. When he won, I knew there was only going to be fruition behind this, simply because all these companies just got banked with this last tax cut, even though it took a while for it to happen.
What's the connection between that and Bitcoin?
Bitcoin, Microsoft was behind Bitcoin. All these companies were, there were a lot of companies backing Bitcoin. So these major companies were going to get a plus from having Trump back them. All these countries who were going bankrupt were switching over to cryptocurrency. So I was just like, all right, this is making sense. Let me dive into this. So that was kind of my initiative to be like, all right, you know what, this is $646 worth it, But at the same time, now it's kind of doing its dip and dive, and it's been doing that consistently within the past couple of 3 months. I'm hoping it comes back up, but at the same time, I'd like to get into your guys' ideas to its value towards the Black community, and if there's any value, should Black people even be worried about looking for a different avenue to become successful, because the avenues we've been taking so far have not been as effective. We're working in a white man's world. Let's just be real. What happens if we decide to take it into our own hands and use a currency that could possibly?
I think any opportunity, you just have to look into any opportunity that comes your way. I pretty much think that
You're an opportunist.
Yeah, and I guess in that sense, it's more, you do your research, you look into what other people are doing, and that's the thing. It wasn't like I don't own Bitcoin, I own Litecoin, so it's like you do your research, you see where you can get in. I don't see the sense in sitting back and saying, oh, it's not going to happen.
Right.
I'm more of a, it might happen, I'm going to put my foot.
That's enough.
That's enough.
Right.
That's
50-50.
enough.
It's a coin toss.
And you don't want to go crazy in it. You spend what you can spend.
Which is why you chose Litecoin over Bitcoin.
Right. And if Litecoin does what Bitcoin does, you buy in now, you sit back and you see what develops,
Because there's a lot of technology within the cryptocurrency though is based off of Bitcoin.
Right.
Bitcoin is old.
Right.
Ethereum was a new thing, is the new thing. Ripple is even better, just because it becomes more secure as things come along. So this technology will bring, at least in my opinion, it will bring something that's like perfect.
If you look at the internet,
there's been a huge evolution.
If you look at the internet, right, it's like people were like, "Oh, what are you gonna? Your email? What the hell is email?" Right. But now it's like it's
you can't live without.
You can't live without it. Mm-hmm.
If large numbers of Black people decided to start investing in Bitcoin, I think it could have some potential.
Right.
I just don't see a direct connection between the Black community and Bitcoin.
Simply, what I'm asking is is it an opportunity that's available? More people.
I think so.
People start buying Bitcoin, its value goes up. If the Black community starts, how much we spend in Nikes alone? All that money we spent in Nikes, and
I agree.
I guess we don't spend money on spinners anymore, but like rims and all the things that we waste our money on and invest it in ourselves, the value of Bitcoin goes up, right? Mm-hmm. So
I think it's a possibility. Yeah, absolutely.
That's all I'm saying. Like, that's the connection. Should we invest in ourselves, and why aren't we?
I wish I had money to invest in cryptocurrency right now. I do not. Maybe that's why I'm so pessimistic.
But that's the thing about it. Like, what is the buy-in level for you? Because like a Ripple is what, $1 some odd, or it's very, very low. And that's the thing. Like, when I first heard about Bitcoin, it was 75 cents.
Yeah, that was like in
2008, 2009.
Yeah. Cryptocurrency is a technology that's continually going to evolve, and I feel like there will be more relevancy towards the Black community, because I don't know if you guys follow Dr. Boyce Watkins on YouTube, but he's been a huge advocate. I follow his financial advice a lot, and I feel like he's made some good points as to why Bitcoin is a good idea for our community in itself. Like I said, if more of us are willing to spend on ourselves towards these cryptocurrency, it creates the value. The belief system in the dollar makes the dollar worthwhile. Right. The belief system in cryptocurrency, and as much as you spend on Nikes, if Black people were spending that money on cryptocurrency, there'd be no question. So to that point, we're going to get into Black entrepreneurship. Specifically, is there a lack of it within our community? And why does it seem, what's the difference between other cultures and ours as far as entrepreneurship is concerned and generational wealth? I don't know. You want to take that?
I guess I'll start on the generational wealth thing. I guess it really has to go back. You got to talk about the history. We talk about that generational wealth.
Fair enough.
You talk about Reconstruction, Freedmen's Bureau. There have been real policy errors on the part of the U.S. that has detrimentally impacted African Americans to this day.
Like Black Wall Street.
Like that was a good thing that was
That was a
ruined.
good thing that got ruined.
But that wasn't a policy thing. That was an actual just violence thing.
Yeah.
You know, that's like I think a lot of
Let's make sure we chime that in, though.
I think a lot of the problems just come from policy issues. I think in when slaves were first freed, it wasn't we were black people were still thought about in the United States as property. I think it was the whole idea of slavery was in like the agricultural bureau or something like that. Like we were thought of as property, and so we were dealt with as property, not as individuals who are going to be now part of society and this and that. So our considerations as far as holding on to wealth and establishing wealth, that was never a thought, because people couldn't think like that, because all these years, 400 odd years, we weren't that. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's very difficult to then try and make policy for something that you've never experienced, and candidly, you have a bias against. Do you know what I mean? So I think that the whole generational wealth question, I think, has to start from that. The fact that the United States never has really fostered our generational, or helping us to establish that or maintain that.
Your opinion on generational wealth?
Well, I think one of the main reasons, and I'll give my experience as an entrepreneur. It's a lot of there's a lot of fear in it, right? Simply because if you are a white person in America, your mom and dad probably own their home. They have a bunch of equity in it. That if you go out there and you spread your wings and you jump and you fall, there's a safety net. For Black culture, there is no safety net. So it's you step out there, and for me, it was very, very hard in the beginning, and even now, it's sort of like my business is just getting a foothold, only because it's while you're trying to make your money, you got to feed your kids, so you got a second thing on the side, then you got a third thing, and it takes away from your main entrepreneurial goal. Yeah. Whereas if you have that generational wealth, if you have that equity, you solely focus on your cupcake bakery or whatever.
That's a great point. That's a great
so you have to sort of split yourself 6 ways to get one thing done. And it's very, very difficult in that sense. And I think that is one of the main things in the Black community is there is that safety net there is very, very, very risky. Because if it goes wrong, it goes completely wrong.
Are these issues that are specific to Black people that stop us from growing our own businesses? Because it doesn't seem to affect other cultures. So I'm gonna let you touch that first, and we'll come back over here.
I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's a little bit of the way that we live in the United States, and Black people have a specific history in the United States that Asians don't, that all the Mexicans don't. They have their own situations, but we have been systematically shut out from economic gain in a lot of ways. But I also say that I think it's maybe because of that buildup, we've just become complacent, and we just want like nice things. I think that's a part of it too. I can't say that
complacency. Yeah.
Maybe it's complacency. Maybe it's just years and years of seeing, oh, this doesn't work. Then why would you then try if you've seen after all these generations upon generations doesn't work? I think it's both. I think it's both policy that's been in place for generations, and I think it's a will. But I'm not saying all Black people.
Right. Obviously not.
But I think that to a certain extent, it does kind of make it harder, or it just like takes that will away. You know what I mean? When you know that it's going to be that difficult, it goes back to the risk thing. Like that if I don't do this right, like I'm going to be on the street, or I'm going to be like I'm not going to be able to pay my rent this month. Like that's real life serious questions.
Of course.
So I think it's a little bit of both. I think
I've noticed that there's a difference between the cultures that come here and grow first generation children compared to the cultures that have been here for hundreds of years. Yeah. So you can answer the same question.
I agree exactly with what you're saying. But this, I guess, it kind of touches on a point we were talking about earlier. It's just there is this. I grew up in a certain mindset. I'm pretty sure you guys did as well. It's like, and this may sound bad to say or whatever, but I didn't.
Safe space, bro. Safe space.
I didn't. I didn't think of myself as a Black American, right?
Fine.
You understand what I'm saying? It was like, and my parents were pretty adamant that you can't go out there and be like them, and like them. Or I give you our where we grew up. It was a lot of drugs, a lot of crime. Guys walking around with sagging pants and just it was it could not happen. It could not happen. So it was like, you are not that person. You are this person, and it's that. It builds a mental fortitude, if you will. It builds it puts blinders on you basically, and you forget about what's happening around you. You go about your business and you do what you're supposed to do. And I think that is a huge part of it. It's like if you are here as a Black American, they tell you, oh, they killed Martin, they killed Malcolm. They're probably going to kill you too. I remember when in high school they take you to what was it? It was called Scared Straight back then or something like that. And we would take trips to. I remember one time it was an after school program. We went to a prison, Patterson Prison, and we sat in this room, and this guy is just yelling at us, telling us, "Oh, you better get straight because blah blah blah." And I was like, first of all, I'm not crooked. And second of all, I don't know what you're talking about.
This is an after school program, bro. You know why I'm here.
It's like, I'm not on the streets. I'm not doing that. And this and the third. I don't know who you're talking to. I'm not gonna be that person. So it's mental. I think 400, 500 years of hearing and doing and being that one thing took a huge toll. Whereas you come here as another person, it's not that way for you.
We touched on just feeling different from other Black people. Earlier on, we were discussing in our Shithole Countries topic. I kind of brought up the point of if there's anything that made you feel different than other Black people, and you kind of touched on it, like where you were like you were reminded that you aren't like African Americans. You are specific to your own identity, and I think that's a very Caribbean thing.
Sure.
It's a very Caribbean thing. Like, listen, you are not like these hoodlums.
Right.
Like, we're about what we got to do. Stay on track. Like, from what I understand about your mom, she was very strict and she kept you on your toes as far as like making sure you did what you needed to do. And it sounds like the same happened to you. Yeah. So what does it mean, for either of you, whoever wants to touch on this, to be who you are? What does that mean? Like, when you're told not to be like anyone else, but like you need to remember who you are. Like, what does that mean to you when you hear that? Or if you can remember what your parents were telling you at that point in time, what did it mean to you to hear that? Who you are, don't be like them, don't be a Black American, be what we are.
I never heard anything else. Like, that was all. I never knew what the difference was. It was like, okay, don't wear baggy jeans. Like, you're not gonna get those sneakers. Don't even think about it. Like, I never knew anything different. So it was never, for me, it was never like having to choose. It was just kind of like that is what it was, because I never knew anything different. I thought that was normal. That was what my parents were telling me to do. Like, that was life, Right. So I never really saw like a choice, really. I guess,
Right. Yeah. And I mean, like, all right, that's understandable, and you feel the same way.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, you're spot on. It was. You're. I think in a Caribbean household, man, you don't really have a choice of, this sort of free. I don't want to. You have free will, I would say, but I mean, it's like you're gonna do what your parents say. It's not an issue.
Dig it. What efforts, if any, have you seen within our community? Have there been to grow the idea of entrepreneurship amongst Black people? I don't like my only avenue for that whole idea is YouTube and Dr. Boyce Watkins and his Black School of financial growth.
Right.
I it's unfortunate to say that that has been like the one person, like other than talking to either of you at any point in time, but that has been the only person I've seen in our community have like the drive to be like, listen, you're fucking up because you choose to fuck up. Like this is how you make like this is how you make money. This is what you need to do. Get rid of your debt. Like I've never seen that in our community where it's just like just putting reality checks for you have a problem. Let's address the problem. Let's make money. You know, like, and it seems as though that's such a rarity. It's so scarce because he's even talked about like having to travel to London and being detained at the airport because now he's, you know, to one of my earlier episodes, a black identity extremist. So he was held for 9 hours in London.
Wow.
Because he advocates for black prosperity. Like literally all he was doing was going to talk amongst black people to tell them about what they're, you know, how to make more money. And they held him for 9 hours because of who he was and what he talks about. Like the fact that that goes on in 2018, at the time it was in 2017, it's freaking ridiculous. You can't go to another country to help out other black people to talk about money without being considered an extremist.
Wow, I did not know that.
That's wild.
So I don't know if you guys, yeah, it's wild, but like, are you guys surprised? Like, are you surprised at the end of the day?
That does surprise me, in a sense, because, you know, first of all, he's an internet celebrity.
Yeah,
That in itself is crazy. Like you picking up on this man who's, you know, he's on Facebook and
Look
all
at
that
the
kind of stuff.
number of his followers, bro.
Yeah,
He has millions
and
of followers.
like you, he wants to change people's mindset when it comes to wealth, but the idea of changing a mindset is not new. He's applying it to finance, but I think that's the nuance that makes him who he is. But to be, I didn't know anything. That's really surprising. To
Yeah,
me.
it's ridiculous. He just recorded the whole thing. He's like, "Listen, guys, I'm supposed to be at this conference right now." Like he was doing a FaceTime moment on YouTube, and he's just like, "But I'm being detained, and they're asking me all sorts of questions about what I'm doing here." Like they knew he had an itinerary. He has a manager. Like they knew exactly what he was going there for,
Right.
and they tried to postpone it they postponed him for 9 hours. Had he not put out that video, people wouldn't know to be like, you know, it's like, oh, he didn't just show up. He didn't just pull a black person
Right, sure.
on us. Like he's gonna show up, but the white man has his hand in it. You know,
This comes down to individual discipline. Like, no, we can't progress as a race or a people unless individuals make their own choices. For example, like not spending money on crazy things or having the idea about generational wealth and understanding that you need to pass something down in order to create anything. Like we're already hundreds of years behind the game.
yeah.
Like, and so if you're not creating something to pass down or you're not creating a business or something like that, then you're not going to catch up, at least not in this generation. You know what I mean? So I think that mindset would probably need to change on an individual level, you know, but that's tough because everybody's got their own story.
It's true.
I mean? So it's like, you would hope that would happen, but it's not going to happen like that. Everybody's got their own story. Everybody's got their own issues they're going through, whether it might be health issues or something comes up that they need to. So it's like that's like the utopian idea, but in reality, it's very difficult to do. You know?
I think there are avenues for people to be educated around finance, or to. I think nowadays, man, we walk around with a world of knowledge in our pockets, right? And it's really just having the wherewithal, knowing what to look for, to go out there and actually make use of it. Another thing that I actually found out being an entrepreneur, starting a business, is it's not as hard as people make it out to be. And I'll explain it this way, right? Forming an LLC is not difficult. You just have to have the right. You have to be put into the right direction, or know what to look for. I think a lot of people sort of, when they there's like this. I don't know. I don't want to call it mysticism, but it's like, to be a stockbroker or to understand the market, it seems very, very hard to do.
Yes, we were talking about.
But it's sort of like if you just it seems like you have to go to school for a number of years and have a degree to understand it, but you really, really don't. And once you start, it's like once you start, you actually realize that this is not that hard. And I think that is for a lot of people, they just stop right there. It's like, it's a stock market. Oh my God, it's it's like teaching an elderly person to use a smartphone. It's like, oh my God, I can't do this thing, but it's so intuitive once you start, to actually
There's a lot of jargons, a lot of like acronyms and blah blah blah. But once you start doing it, it's really not complicated. I think the one thing we were talking about before too is it's like a huge barrier to entry. Like you want your child to make a lot of money. You want them to be like an investment banker. Blah blah blah. They have to go to XYZ school, right? To learn how to do it, right? But in order to get to XYZ school, you need $250,000, and that's how they're able to control like who gets access to the information. Because if you don't have,
you can say who they are.
Mostly white people, right? So that if as long as they can keep that control on the access of information, then you say, like for example, first year people out of Goldman Sachs, most of them are coming out of Ivy Leagues. Not all. There are people who are coming from state schools, people who are doing all that, but the majority of them are coming from Ivy League schools. How do you get into an Ivy League school if you're not on full scholarship or a genius, very, very smart? It's money. So that just perpetuates the whole cycle. Like, okay, you want to make money, you got to go to the school. How do you go to the school? You have to have money. Well, there's a disconnect there. You know what I mean? So
there's the paradox.
There's a paradox for sure.
In short, there are a lot of issues that we're dealing with that it kind of prevent us from getting to X, Y, and Z, and we want to get there. Hopefully, this dialogue reaches more people, because this is conversations we need to have amongst ourselves in order for us to learn, advance, and prosper. I hope that we can continue more of these conversations, more with the community in itself, and once that happens, there's going to be more avenues for us to reach out to, and more avenues where we can actually develop a better position for ourselves, regardless of what the people in power want to prevent. If there's more of us on the same page, then there's less opportunity for them to stop us from gaining opportunity. So let's keep that in mind. This has been episode 3 of Black in Fact, and thank you for joining us.